Hey Lolo,
Hi, Tammy. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a whole week since we've gotten to talk, and I'm so
Yeah,
excited to be back here.
me too.
Welcome everybody to the third episode of the United States of Us, and today is also a lunar eclipse of the blood moon, which has all of us feeling a little loco right now. So, with that, I'm going to let Lori open us up, and we're just going to wing it today. We are going to fly by the seat of our pants and let this conversation go where it will. So, you guys buckle up because it's probably going to get weird.
That's right. All right, Tammy, hold on. I'm pulling this up now. I'm a little discombobulated today. I'm not at my normal spot.
No
I am
worries.
actually in Florida. I'm in Claremont, Florida, which is a little bit west of Orlando, and really enjoying some beautiful sunshine and some good times with a very good friend of mine. And so I'm so grateful to be here.
Yay.
Yeah. All
I've seen
right.
some of your photos. It looks like you're having a blast. So,
Yeah, we did a catboat tour, which was really fun. She lives in a community that's on a lake, and there's like seven lakes connected. And we got to go by the house where the Water Boy was filmed, which was so
that's
fun, where he lived with his mom. And so it's still blue, it still looks the same. And that was fun.
that's hilarious.
Yeah. All right, I'm still scrolling to find this. I had it pulled
Okay.
up and then it went down on me. So,
Yeah, no worries. So while you're doing that, I'm just going to
mhm.
talk a little bit more about the lunar eclipse and the importance of it. And if you are a sensitive person, you may have been feeling the energy around that in the last few days. I have been feeling the energy around that, and what we are learning is that this eclipse is representative of the final releasing of the things that are not going to serve you going forward in the new world in this year of the fire horse. And so, typical for me when I'm in a releasing phase, I tend to cry a lot. And so, the last couple of days, I will just cry at the drop of a hat, no matter where we are, privately, publicly. We were in a restaurant this morning downtown and just having a late little breakfast, and it was beautiful outside, just sitting there. There were other people sitting around, and all of a sudden the waterworks come on. Why?
Yeah.
And so Hope looked at me and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Well, no, not really, but it's not going to be any different anywhere else, so we might as well stay."
I find myself,
Just give
Tammy,
me a minute and a couple of napkins and I'll get over it.
yeah, I find myself too when I do releases, people release differently. And for me, I tend to cry as well. It comes over me and sometimes I don't even understand why it's happening. And I
Right.
just I just have learned that I need to sit and allow the release. And just sometimes it's 10, 20 minutes of just crying because we hold so much in our bodies and our bodies protecting us by holding that for us so we can continue to move forward and not stay stuck in that pain. And I actually a little over a year ago, I went down to Savannah, Georgia to visit a girlfriend. And then the friend I'm staying with here, she actually came up from Florida. My friend in Georgia, her husband had passed away just 4 days before, we got down there. So we were able to wrap her up in love. And while I was there, there was a crystal shop I wanted to go to. And I bought the crystal that called to me. I named her Savannah. white, beautiful, clear white, a clear crystal. And so the lady there said, "Hey, we've got some really amazing stones that came in from somewhere out west, and they only had a few of them." And it was called dioptase. I guess that's the way you pronounce it. But it's this beautiful green, like copper, that grows on this stone. And so I got a little piece. It was like the least fancy of the three. And it was really small. It was only about this big and got put in a necklace. And I did a little research on it. And it was for to give you courage and also to work through generational trauma. And so I found myself being
Oh,
called to put that necklace on when I had those massive releases. And it really just gave me so much comfort. I may have not understood what I was releasing in the moment, but then the clarity would come later. And it's just something that I was
oh
holding
yeah.
on to. And so, yeah, I understand about the crying. And I'm glad you're releasing. It's so good that you're not pushing it back down and letting it flow through you.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think, well, for me, I'm going to speak for me because I don't know what it was like in your family as a child, but I've always been a sensitive person. I always feel things a lot more deeply than many others feel. And I can sense things, you know, without really knowing how any of that works. And as a child, I distinctly remember when I would be upset about something or I would be crying about something, that the old Southern saying, you better quit that crying before I give you something to cry about.
Right.
Or, stop being so sensitive, don't be such a baby. And all of those things. And so, I was taught at an early age that crying is weakness and you don't show weakness at any cost. And so at 58, I have a lot of tears that have been stored up inside of me. And don't get me wrong, I've cried a whole lot of tears over the last 30 or so years of my life as I've worked through recovery, as I've worked through therapy, as I've worked through, the personal growth programs that we've been in.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's when you feel that release coming, my first instinct is to shut it down, stop it. I don't want to show weakness in front of anybody. And allowing myself the freedom to just feel it and let it wash through me and out of me is amazing. And I find myself really overstimulated a lot more now than I think I've ever paid attention to in my past. We went recently, a couple weeks ago, to get our TIE cards here, and we had to go to the National Police Station about 10 minutes in the little town, 10 minutes away from us. And we got there. I felt really frustrated and anxious. The language barrier causes me anxiety sometimes, especially in an official setting like that, where it really is important that I understand what's being said and not just pick up a few words. So we got there, didn't know if we were supposed to check in or not. We didn't really know, didn't understand what the person who was telling us where to go, what they were trying to tell us. And so it all just sort of blew up. And we went and sat in the little waiting area, and I could feel it. Like I could just feel the tears. I'm going to get weepy now talking about
Okay.
it.
It's okay.
But I could just feel the tears coming. And I did not want to cry in the freaking National Police
Well, you might have gotten
Department
help
of
quicker.
thing. And so we were sitting there, and I didn't have a Kleenex. And what I found myself doing is just pinching the bridge of my nose and deep breathing, like doing the box breathing, 4 in, breathe in for 4, breathe, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, hold it out for 4.
Mhm.
And I just did that. And, and Hope looked at me and she goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to self-regulate for once in my life." So it was, and she was very calm and supportive and all of that, but it was just funny. She said, "I've never seen you do that before." And I said, "It's because I've never done it. I've usually just lost my shit somewhere." So anyway, I think I'll try that self-regulation thing. Maybe a little more often.
Let's see what happens. So, how'd it work out for you?
Yeah. It was fine. I was able to calm my nervous system. I was able to, and interestingly enough, we got called to the desk. We were the next people that got called up. And the man had helped us when we had gone there before to do our applications. And he was just such a beautiful person. He is physically handicapped and he was just so very kind and compassionate and complimentary to both me and Hope and made both of us feel so welcomed.
Oh,
And I just remember thinking, what a beautiful soul and what a contribution he makes to this world, right? Just what a
yes.
beautiful contribution that he is. And so it was, yes, it was almost like because I took the time to self-regulate there in the waiting area, then the universe said, "Okay, I'm going to send you back to this beautiful soul again because I know that he will care for you," right? So it was all fine. It's
I
all
love
fine.
that. I love that. Yeah. And, part of that, I think, Tammy, is, the world reflecting back to you who you are. So that beautiful soul was there waiting for you and just gave
I
you a
think so.
little bit of love that you needed in that moment. So that's beautiful. So yeah, I also, growing up in the South, I grew up in an alcoholic home. My father was an alcoholic. He got sober when I was in seventh grade. My mom did not drink. She drank very rarely and kept, our home together. And it's interesting though, as far as, coping mechanisms with that and going through that process. I'm a twin. And my sister and I, um, we responded to it very differently. My coping mechanism was I would go hide and make myself as small as possible. And Julie would, she would stand up and she would stand up for herself. She would stand up for, I think she felt like she was also standing up for my mom and I. And honestly, for me, it'd be kind of like, would you please stop? You're making it worse. But that's who she was. And she was just going to stand up
Right.
and, fight back. And that's where she was. And, I learned at a young age just to hide and just to blend into the background as much as I could. And I was very insecure, and I'm now just finding my true way out of that. And it's gotten better over the years. It's not that I was the same insecure, second grader that showed up in, Germantown Elementary, but um, yeah. And so I cried a lot as well. I held in a lot as well with, just life experiences. We all have them and just moving on every day. And I remember many days, crying myself to sleep but also telling myself, I know tomorrow's going to be a better day. I know it's going to be a better day. And it may or may not have been, but I knew I had to keep going because the only way
Right.
out is through. So, I mean, that's something that I have learned. And yeah, though, but it is, I'll give you something to cry about. And I'm going, but I didn't ask for any of this.
Right.
But here I am. But
Right.
maybe I did ask for it. I don't know. But it was tough. It was tough.
I
So
just remember as a kid, my dad was a yeller, like when for the most part, he's funny, he's laid back, he's easygoing, everybody in town knows him. And but when he reached peak frustration levels, he would scream. And when you're a little kid, that's frightening. Just seeing an adult unregulated like that is frightening. The loud noise, the loud voices, my dad was not ashamed of some very colorful curse words. And so that is how my brother and I learned to deal with frustration. When you've had enough, when you've reached your limit, you become angry about it and you yell and scream. And it doesn't matter who's in your circumference, like who's in your wake, you just get it out. That's how you do it. And I've pretty much done that my whole adult life. So Hope was not wrong when she said she's never seen me try to self-regulate that way. It was a new practice for me and one that I'm probably going to try to continue because it felt a whole lot better than just screaming.
yeah,
Don't get me wrong, I love screaming into a pillow. I love a good scream into a pillow.
that's good release too, though.
But it's amazing. But what I don't love is spewing that frustration in an unregulated way out onto the people around me that I love because I remember the fear around that as a child. And like I know I've caused that in my own child and just around the people that I love. So that's not who I want to be. And I'm going to do that differently.
Yeah, learning to respond instead of react. That's kind of what that is. And, you just kind of have to step back and just kind of breathe into the moment and just say, okay, I'm here. What is this teaching me? Instead of it's coming at me. It's not coming at me. It's the situation is neutral. And it's just how I'm filtering
Hmm.
it. And so I need to step back and just take a moment and say, okay, take a breath, think about it just for a moment. Don't just react through all of just, my subconscious and my ego coming up to protect me and just trying to push whatever it is away when it really is something for me. So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But, I just don't think we had the language for all of this back then.
we
I
didn't.
really feel like what is happening now around us, like you can see the chaos, everyone can feel the chaos around all of us. And many of us, with whatever belief system we practice, believe that it's not sustainable. Something's going to happen, and this level of anxiety, this level of nervous system unregulation, this level of chaos, and really, it's almost like a mental and a spiritual invasion. It's what it feels like to me, is not sustainable. And I think more and more people are feeling that and looking for language to describe it.
Yes.
So it's interesting that we are so able to see, like from our childhood, how we just didn't have the tools to do that. Our parents didn't have the tools to do that. It's not that they were bad parents, it's just that, their parents didn't know and couldn't teach them. So they couldn't teach us. And I really feel like we've talked about this before, but I really feel like we chose to be here in this timeline so that we could break that cycle and sort of set our lineage free, set our ancestors free, you know.
Yeah, with the healing that we've gone through, we all have generational trauma that's come through. And when we heal that, it, from what I see, it goes 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. And I know my daughter and I have worked through some things, and the dynamics with mother and daughters through my generational line from the few that I know of. I really feel like we've done some amazing healing for our generational line. And I'm so proud of that for us and being in such a beautiful place. And it just makes me so excited about those generations to come. And, my daughter's daughter and the relationship they're going to get to have because they're not going to carry that forward. And that is beautiful. It really is. And if you would have asked me that,
I really,
a year and a half ago, I would not have thought that was possible. But here we are. It can happen quickly. It doesn't have to take, an entire lifetime to get there. The biggest piece is just finding yourself to be open and willing to listen to both sides because neither of them are wrong. Um, Again, I mentioned, my sister and us growing up. I mean, we were in the same environment, but we had totally different experiences. So what she feels and what she's carrying is 100% valid for her. And also for me. And I've had to work through much of that and go through the forgiveness process. And, forgiving others felt a bit easier than forgiving myself. It was like I went through forgiveness and then I was like, okay, well, but I still, I just still need to give, 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 give. And just not look at myself. If I just keep giving then and keep going and keep pushing and keep moving and keep busy and distracted, I don't look at myself. And then I had to slow down and take a big look in the mirror and realize I created what was around me and I taught the world how to treat me. And it all stemmed back to my childhood trauma of wanting to be invisible and play small and just blend in the background because it felt safer that way for me. Yeah.
right, right. Um, I agree wholeheartedly with that. My mother and I did not have a great relationship. Um, we never had a great relationship. I was an unplanned pregnancy, and it took until her death for me to actually be able to consider her life from behind her eyes. And, you know, I was a burden to her whole life. And I don't doubt that she loved me the best way that she could, but I was the physical representation of her life being completely upended and everything that she knew being taken away from her. She grew up very poor in small town Alabama and in a family of, excuse me, 12 brothers and sisters. And she met my dad who was coming through town on the way back from Germany in the army and got pregnant. And then all of a sudden, she's being moved from Alabama to small town Mississippi, where she doesn't know anyone. And she's pregnant. She has no one to call on who she can talk to about her experience. She has no career, no education. She didn't finish high school. So it took a long time for me to be able to see just how trapped she probably felt at that time. And she she had her own wounds, from her childhood that she was dealing with. I don't know what those wounds were. We were never close enough to have conversations like that. And 13 years ago, after I came out as gay, she made the choice that she didn't want to have anything to do with me, so she didn't speak to me for 13 years. And so She died in June of 2025, 2 weeks before we left to move to Spain. And to the best of my knowledge, she did not ask to see me when she was in the hospital before she died. And I made the choice to not go to her funeral because she told me 13 years earlier that she did not want to be a part of my life, and I respected her decision. For me to go to her funeral after she was gone felt like disrespect on my part as well. If I respected her wishes while she was alive, I was not going to disrespect her in her death. That side of the family is prone to a good bit of drama anyway, so there would have been nothing but drama around all that. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I felt very hurt that at least the cousins who professed to love me and care about me, not one single person reached out to me when she died to say, I'm so sorry. And um, that that was a betrayal, and so I felt that then. Um, but my daughter went, and I was very glad for that. My daughter went to see her before she died, and so she got to see her and talk to her before she died, and so I was grateful for that. I know that that meant a lot to my mother. And interestingly enough, the peace between me and my mother came after her death. Um, I knew the moment that she died, I was in Mississippi visiting my dad before we were leaving to go to Spain, and I smelled my mother's perfume.
Mm.
And it was a very distinct smell as a child because she smoked cigarettes. And so this perfume blended with cigarette smoke is exactly the smell that I smelled, and it just washed over me completely. And I knew it was her. I felt her, and I knew that it was her. And I didn't feel afraid. What I felt for the very first time in my whole life with her was how much she loved me. And I knew right then that every block she had ever had during her life to loving me had been removed. And she was finally able to just pour all of that out in spirit form. And I'm so grateful that I'm sensitive and I can feel that and I can recognize that and I can smell that. It was beautiful and it was very healing for me. And then we moved to Spain, and my birthday is in October. And the day of my birthday, Hope went to make coffee for me and bring me coffee in bed. And she opened the window, and when she did, my mother blew in. Like I
Mm.
smelled her and I felt her, and it was the first birthday in over 40 years that she had celebrated with me.
It's
So
beautiful.
that has been a very beautiful experience. And I'm not going to apologize for crying. This is the whole releasing thing, but it's just going to come up and out. And so I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I am
Well,
at peace around the relationship with my mother.
well, and Tammy, as hard as it was for you with your mother, the life that you created for you and your daughter and the relationship you have with your daughter, you saw how you were treated and how it made you feel, and you decided to do things differently. And that's where it stopped. You stopped it there. And going forward, your daughter and those future generations, they thank you for that, because
Absolutely.
they're going to feel the
Absolutely.
love.
I was not a perfect mother, and I'm still not a perfect mother. But I even think that my daughter would agree that she knows without a doubt that she is wanted and loved without reason, without condition. And every time I speak to her, those words come out of my mouth. So, yes,
Well,
yes.
I found myself, my mom and dad divorced when I was 19 and or 18. I can't remember it's been a few years. But I found myself seeing that, I didn't have a relationship with my mother. And it was because I was really disconnected from my family. I was absent. I was busy. I went to school. I worked. I played softball. I had a boyfriend. I spent a lot of time at his house. His mom was like my second mom. I feel that way about her today. And she showed me that how a healthy relationship looked. And it was beautiful to see that with her and her husband. So I got to witness that. And, it didn't feel great at home. So I kind of made myself absent from home. When I was at home, I was there to eat, I was there to sleep, I studied, I read books because I love reading. I found books in third grade, and you talk about hiding and becoming, not seeing. Talk about a girl back in her bedroom and just reading as much as she can when I wasn't able to be outside playing until the street lights came on. So I found myself not having a good relationship with my mother. And I'm like, so we started going to lunch like every week. I was going to school, not college, not far from where she worked. And we would meet once a week. My daughter was born when I was 23. And my mom, my daughter, and we would it was about once a quarter, we would take trips up to see my grandmother in Louisville. And my daughter now tells me she has some really good memories from that time. But the three of us would get in the car. And so there were four generations there together. And it's some of her good memories. And so mom and I got to know each other a little better. And it's about, spending time with each other. And then, there were times I'd get frustrated with her, I mean, that's mother and daughter relationships. It's kind of, it's one of those things. But the older, she gets, the older I get. And the more I kind of step into her shoes and just look at it and think, wow, I cannot believe how strong you were through all that, even though she probably felt like she wasn't, staying with my dad through everything. But she did it. She did everything she could for us. And I see that. I really do see that. And I'm so grateful for her. And then my grandmother, my goodness, her father died when she was young. She ended up having to quit school. I don't know, eighth grade, ninth grade, something crazy young. And let's see, her mother took boarders in. So they had boarders in the home. And my grandmother went and worked in a cigarette factory to bring income in to help her mother, support her siblings. So she didn't get to really, have a fun teenage years and married later in life, once her siblings got older. And then she started her life with my grandfather. And from what I understand, they had a good marriage and they used to dance. They used to have like dance parties down in the basement. My mom said she'd go down on the staircase and watch, and she just loved to watch them dance because my grandmother and grandfather, they were good dancers. So I love that story. And so let's see, there were four children, and the youngest one was born disabled. And so my grandmother, was tasked with taking care of him, plus the other three. And my mom said my grandmother was pretty critical of her. And my mom is just a sweet, sensitive soul. And so that was very hard for her. And so when my mother would react, sometimes that's what would come out of her would be that type of behavior and, just reacting and just saying whatever to just get the person away from her is what I was seeing. That's what I see today when, comments would be made. And so, I mean, we're not perfect. None of us are. I know I'm not as a mother myself. I mean, again, I was a very insecure person. And my daughter and I were disconnected for 11 years. And that was tough. She actually had a marriage in there, and I never met that husband. And that was pretty tough to deal with. So those are some of the things that get buried down in the body. And but once I started my healing journey, a few years ago, and really started looking at the dynamics. And, I didn't make great decisions. And I understand my first husband, why he had anger there. And not that I deserved to be treated the way I was, but it happened and we can't go back and change it. But I do understand a bit about that now of why he was so hurt. And, Lauren, my daughter was influenced and, she wasn't allowed to love her mother. And so it's so beautiful for me to watch her because she's also a stepmother and seeing her allowing her stepdaughter and the boys to love their mother and just be so accepting. And I'm so proud of her. It's like, yes, look, this can happen. And their family is just full of love and happiness. And it's, nothing's perfect. There's always stuff that happens and goes on and craziness, but they're a solid unit and it's beautiful to see. Yeah.
I love that too. We're all just little wounded souls walking around in this world, right? Um, and I don't know how we can come out of it unscathed, right?
Yeah.
And my parents divorced too when I was 21, and it was a horrible, horrible divorce. It lasted forever, it felt like. Even when 15 years later after the divorce, when my daughter was a baby, my mother was still talking about taking my dad back to court. And oh my God, I remember telling her, please don't go to court again with him. Please don't do that. I will send you money every month if that's what you need. I will send you money if money is what you need. And and of course, I'm divorced too. Um, my daughter's father and I. And one of the things that I've always been extremely aware of and honestly quite proud of is that he and I came out of it as friends. And the children have always been the forefront of everything. We haven't been perfect. We had a few years right at the divorce where we were both hurt and both looking for somebody to take the blame. And there was really no blame. Our journey together was over. I mean, that was just it, plain and simple. Nobody did anything wrong. Nobody cheated. Nobody, did something against the other person. It was really just that our journey had ended. And he went on to find someone who's beautiful and loves him. And I'm so happy for him because he deserves that. And I went on to find someone who loves me. And I'm so happy about that. And, he has two children from a previous marriage. They'll always be my oldest two. And I love those children like I like they're mine, like exactly like they're mine. They were 5 and 3 when we met, and and then we have Rowan as well. And I really, really, really feel proud of the fact that we come together when we need to come together around the children, that we didn't have and don't have the same tumultuous relationship that my parents had for their whole lives. You know, they couldn't even be in the same room and have a conversation with each other 30 years after the divorce, right? And there's something beautiful about knowing that your children deserve the best part of you, each of you. And I love that.
Yeah, me too. It's amazing for me to watch and see, how well they're doing. And I'm just grateful to get to witness that as much as I'm, able to. And, my parents divorced and, my mother, she just wanted out. She's like, I just want out. I just want to move on. And my dad was very angry. I remember when it all started happening. They separated for a little bit. Mom came back home. And then all of a sudden, and you probably remember this too, my dad showed up at the bank branch I was working at, and he had pulled out the money from the bank where they banked and came in to open new accounts. And that's how I found out that this was happening. And so, I mean, just the feelings of that, he's over there and I hear him talking and I'm going, oh my gosh, what is going on? And then my mother calls me same day at the bank crying and all upset. And I'm like, Mom, that he can do that. And so she ended up going to get an attorney and, and things went on from there. And she was absolutely done at that point. And, in hindsight, maybe they should have divorced sooner. They were very different people. My father, like I said, got sober when I was in seventh grade. But he was interesting because before, at least he would a lot of times just pass out early after, he had raged or, we had gotten in trouble and yelled at and spanked and what have you. I said, but now he was angry and just awake and like always kind of in that state of mind, unless he was going to his meetings, those seemed to make him happy around the people. But it he had his own childhood wounding that he had not worked through. But it was beautiful, Tammy, because towards the end of his life, he was very peaceful. He had found his way through forgiveness. He even made a comment to me once. He said, I'm right where I am because all of the choices I've made in my life. And I said, yes, you are. And then it's like, we all are. I mean, we're a sum of all of our choices. And if we look up and we don't like what we see, then we need to choose differently and
Right.
move on from there. I mean, we don't have to stay where we are. Um, I know that while I was going through my awakening and my healing, I was kind of projecting out on my husband. And he's so great. I mean, he stuck with me through all of that, but just taking my frustration out on him. And finally, I paused and I looked around and I'm like, I prayed for all of this. This is actually beautiful where I am. Why am I fighting this? Why am I taking this out on him? And I went, oh, because it's something within me. Because he's just, an understanding person. I mean, he's not perfect. None of us are. And his first answer is always no. So I have learned with him if there's something I want to do, that I just give him a lot of advance notice so he has time to process it. And then he comes around. And sometimes it just looks like his idea. And so, we learn how to deal with each other. But, we dated for 4 years. We've been married over 20 now, and I'm just grateful for him to be in my life. So, but I had to realize that
Yeah.
I was the one causing the dynamic. He wasn't doing anything to me. It was me and my pain that was coming up to release that I was still trying to hold down, and it was just projecting out onto him. So, yeah. But my mother is in,
Absolutely.
she's in a good place these days. She's gone through, so much forgiveness herself and just is in a very peaceful place. And I love that for her. I mean, we may talk once or twice a week and, see each other, maybe every other month or once a quarter. But, she knows I love her and I know she loves me. And it's just unconditional because there's so much acceptance there of who we are, right where we are. And I think that's one of the things that we all can work at is just allow people to be who they are and not expect them to be like, like me. I don't expect people to be my, how boring would that be if everybody, all these Lorries were walking around? I mean, come on. That's what makes it so fun because we all have our own little God spark because so we all are connected. We're all from the same source. We're all from the same place, but we're our own little reflection of that. We just, our own little piece and our own little personality. It's amazing. Yeah,
I heard someone call it a God link one time, that I
I
am a
like
God
that.
link. And I love that. I did too.
I
It
love
just
that.
sort of made me visualize this little, that spark of God, this little link from God is in me, and I get to choose what I do with it, right? So I
Yes.
I, I really love that. You know, I was thinking about what you were talking about too, and what we just said about how we're all just wounded souls walking around. And for the longest time, like for most of my adult life, my mother was the bad guy in my mind, right? And my dad was the one family member that I connected to, right? That I belonged with, right? And again, it wasn't until after her death that I was able to see some of her life and some of her experience through her eyes. And one of the things that came away when we did this leadership training that we just
Mhm.
did, one of the things that came to me was really something that I needed to say to my dad, and that was that I really needed to see him care about her as a child. When I was a child, I didn't need for him to love her, but I needed for him to care about her as a human being. My dad makes comments that are not respectful of women in general, and he does it to be funny. He's not doing it to be malicious, but especially now, I'm much more aware of that, and I'm much more aware of the impact that it's had on me as a female walking through this world, and the impact that it has on my niece and my daughter as women walking through this world. And that's when one of the things that was on my heart a few months back was that I just really think that it is important, especially now, for the men in our lives to show care about the women in their lives. When we're in the room and when we're not in the room. Like our children need to see that. They need to witness that. And again, it doesn't have to be because you're madly in love with someone. It can just be because someone else is a human, you know? My dad was not kind to my mother in many ways. And so I think that I carried the wounds of that. I think that my brother carries the wounds of that subconsciously. So it's interesting.
Yeah,
And I'm
it's similar.
grateful that we have a choice to do things differently today.
Yes. Same though. It was very similar. My dad took out his anger on my mom and then ultimately us as well. But it was just, every day you just never knew what you were going to get. It was just chaos. And, that's all I knew. So I didn't really understand that it could be different again, like I said, until high school when I really got to experience, witnessing a beautiful, healthy marriage between my boyfriend at the time and her husband. I mean, my boyfriend's mother and her husband. And I'm forever grateful for that. I got married because I was pregnant. I found myself pregnant. And my mom had just recently married. My dad was living in Texas. I didn't really feel like I had a choice. And so we decided to marry, and we kind of did the best we could. But I was very unhappy, and it really wasn't anything that my first husband did. It was just me because I felt trapped. And I just wasn't, I just didn't feel like I was where I was supposed to be. And so ultimately divorced.
Right.
I actually asked for it a year before, and then something happened that really scared me. He flipped a table in our living room and there was glass in it. It shattered. He probably doesn't even remember that, but I remember it distinctly because it brought back all those memories of my father, when he used to kick in walls and what have you. And so I stayed, and then I didn't make great decisions. I ended up having an affair. And, I had karma that came my way from that. Had I left a year before, I think things would have been very different. They would have been very different. I wouldn't have created that karma for myself. So, but worked through it, and it was a decision. It wasn't a great decision, but I just had this, empty hole, emptiness inside of me I was trying to fill. And, it didn't do that. It didn't. So, I'm not proud of it, but it is what it is. And like I said, I can't go back and
It
change it. All
is.
I can do is move forward.
That's it. No shame. We all make the best choices that we can make with the information we have at the time. And when you think of the fact that we all do it from spaces of wounded souls, then I
Yeah.
mean, it's not such a stretch to imagine the mistakes that we can make. So,
Yeah. And I mean, yes, it's a mistake according to society, but it's a choice. And then based on that choice, you end up moving down another path. It's probably, well, I wouldn't say it kept me on my highest timeline. It actually pivoted me. I feel now I'm back onto my highest timeline with, the decisions I'm making now and the work that I've done and the healing and the love that I put out in this world, and that I am absolutely back on my highest timeline. So yeah. And again, we're just all a choice
yeah.
away to
And
start moving that back towards that highest timeline path.
absolutely, absolutely. There's not any of us who, no one among us has lived a life free from choices we wish we would have made differently, right?
Yeah.
So again, I agree with you. There's no sense in wallowing in that and rehashing it. We make our amends, and then the real amends comes by living differently and doing it differently going forward. And and that's what matters.
Yeah, seeing the lesson in it and learning from the lesson and moving on. And like you and I are doing, sharing these very vulnerable stories in ourselves, just showing others, it can be done. And, you and I are different place. I mean, very different places, but here we are, still similar choices and still, very similar childhood wounds and how that shows up in our lives. And, like you said, we all have, it may not be childhood, it could be from something else. I mean, my husband, he feels like he grew up in a Beaver Cleaver family. I think that's the name of it. I didn't really watch Beaver, but, he had a really great childhood, but, he's had things that have happened in his life as well that have been very traumatic for him. And, the fact he was willing to go down the path to love again and to marry again, I just, I'm grateful for that. So yeah.
Well, I'm grateful for both of you guys. So,
Well, we love you. You know, I mean, your family.
same, same. So, we've come a long way from the days of the Germantown Cecils, a
Oh my
whole long
goodness.
way.
Yeah, that building doesn't even exist anymore. Yeah, a long way.
A whole long way. Well, we started out talking about the blood moon and the lunar eclipse, and that was supposed to be our topic, wasn't it? And we've just managed to, once again, weave magic into these conversations.
Yeah, and it was funny. I finally found the post where I had hid it for myself. And then it's like, okay, well, this discussion was part of what it was about anyway, about, releasing and letting go. Because during this time, things are coming up as you were talking about. So whatever's coming up for you, just allow it to come up and release it and just feel it. Because sometimes we really do have to
I
feel
would
it to
love for
heal
you to
it.
read that post.
Okay,
I
let me
agree.
get
I would love for you to read that post if you feel led to.
Sure. Let me get back in there because, of course, now it's moved on me again. Okay. I found it. It's on Facebook, and I follow a group called 5D State of Mind. And this gentleman, John Roma, is who posted it. And it says the upcoming blood moon lunar eclipse is more than an astronomical event. It feels like a portal of revelation. A lunar eclipse happens when the earth stands between the sun and the moon, casting a shadow over the moon and turning it red during totality. On March 3rd, 2026, that rare red moon returns as a symbol of ending, purification, hidden truth, and inner transformation. Spiritually, the moon represents the inner world, our emotions, our subconscious, our memory, our wounds, our feminine mystery, and the parts of us that live beneath the surface. When the moon is eclipsed, it is if it is as if the hidden chambers of the soul are opened. What we have buried may rise. What has been avoided may be seen. What has been carried too long may finally ask to be released. This is why lunar eclipses can feel so intense. They are not just about the sky, they are about the shadow passing across the cell. And yet, this is where the mystery deepens. The moon does not vanish, it turns red. In mystical language, red is the color of blood, life force, sacrifice, rebirth, alchemy, and sacred transformation. I closed it again. Hold on. So the blood moon carries a message. Something in you is dying, so something more true can be born. This eclipse may illuminate old emotional pain that is ready to leave, karmic cycles reaching completion, attachments to identities you have outgrown, illusions that once protected you but now imprison you, soul lessons that can be understood through surrender. Mystically, an eclipse is a threshold. It is a pause between what was and what will be, a veil moment, a place where the ordinary rhythm breaks and the soul can hear something deeper. This is why many traditions viewed eclipses with reverence, not because they were only fearful events, but because they signaled that the seen world and unseen world were brushing against each other. The spiritual significance of this one may be you are being asked to let the shadow speak, not to fear it, not to run from it, but to listen. Because your shadow is not always your enemy. Sometimes it is the doorway to your liberation. The blood moon is not here to punish, it is here to reveal, to show you where you are still divided within yourself, to show you what part of your life is built on truth and what part is built on fear, to show you what is ready to fall away so your soul can stand in a more authentic light. So if this eclipse stirs you, if it makes you emotional, if old memories return, if clarity suddenly comes, do not assume something is wrong. It may be that your soul is responding to a sacred invitation. The mystical meaning of this blood moon is this: the shadow has come not to destroy your light, but to show you where your real light has been waiting all along. The blood moon is a mirror. What it covers, it reveals. What it darkens, it transforms. What it takes, it was never meant to keep. And what remains may be the truest part of you. Yeah, I thought that was really
Wow.
good.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And I
love that.
think, our discussion actually kind of was around that about release
I
and,
agree.
transformation and, allowing what needs to come up for release. And yeah, and our shadow and our ego. I mean, our ego is a protector for us. Our shadow, I mean, you hear light and dark, and then, yin and yang, and you see in the symbol of the yin and yang, the little bitty white and the dark, and the little bitty dark and the white, and it's all connected. And it just makes us who we are. And once we,
Yeah,
go down the path and do the work and accept that we did those things and accept who we are and love who we were through that, because we were doing the best we could at the time. We really were. And it's all okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, love, our time here is growing short again. These
It
little
goes by so
hours seem like they
fast.
just go by so quickly.
I was saying the same thing. It goes by
Yeah.
really fast. Well, I love you, Tammy. It was good to spend some time with you
So
today.
I love you. I hope same. And I hope you have a great rest of your trip. I can't wait to hear about it. And I'll see you here next week.
Okay, sounds good. Love you.
I love you.
Bye.
Bye.